right, everybody, welcome to the was this the March webinar, I think. So today we got a great program. We decided that because it's almost April that we should probably do a financial webinar. And talking about how to manage finances better is, I know, everybody's number one priority. However, we don't always like to talk about it because we want anybody to know like how bad off we are. Like, okay, I know everybody else is managing finances, but I'm not. And I don't want them to know. So we tend not to talk about finance, even though it is the number one driving force in our businesses today. So what we did was, since Adam Walter does not know finance, I am terrible at it. Don't ask me to run your budgets. Don't ask me to do anything other than proposals. I'll do proposals for you. I will scope out projects, but I will not manage receipts, as my accounting division can tell you. Like, I am the worst at getting those in. So what we've done is we brought in a guy who says he knows what he's talking about. If you could go ahead and turn on your camera and microphone here. Brock Kuski,
Goose.
Oh man, it's not a Nebraskan name. So I slaughter every name that comes in here. Key over at Vonneheim, still trying to pronounce his name correctly. So thank you for coming on, Brock. I appreciate this. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and why you're the de facto authority on all things financial.
Boy, that's a tall bar to clear. I came from a tech background, like so many other people involved in the MSP space. Was turning screwdrivers and installing Windows 95 on machines way back in the day. Slipped into a service management role kind of by accident and discovered that we had no data. We had no numbers. I couldn't make decisions as a manager because I didn't have a budget. I didn't have targets. I didn't know how efficient my staff was. I had nothing to work with. So I decided that learning a lot about data and BI would be a good idea. So fast forward about 15 years and here we are.
When I first learned about Taylor Business Group, and if you guys have any questions for Taylor, they're in the chat there. Ask Dennis. But the concept of being able to measure success and forecast success based upon known metrics, known baselines, it never really occurred to me. Like in the corporate world, I could say, okay, my engineers are sitting around these many hours. I probably need to add another seat in 2026. I could generally spitball it, but it never occurred to me that there's an actual way that you can digest and create a view that will give you the answer you're looking for. When do I hire somebody else? When do I transform myself? So can you give us a little breakdown of like, how do you determine that stuff?
Yeah, it starts with having good, clean data and then looking at how that data reflects the state of your business and then driving decisions off of that information. For us at Taylor, we've been looking at MSP financials now for 21 years now, I think. It's a long time. And we've learned how to slice and dice the numbers. We know what numbers matter, which numbers maybe matter a little less. Which levers do you pull, which levers don't you pull? Where do you really focus your time and energy and attention to drive your business forward based on what the data is telling you? Data is only half the story, but it's an important half of the story that gets missed frequently.
It is. You should actually know what's going on. It's kind of like in engineering, our cacti reports. No one wants to look at cacti reports but the network engineer, and we love seeing them. And like, you can glance at it and be like, oh, well, that's not good. It's absolute noise to anybody else. But, a network engineer can look at that and say, okay, now I've got context. Now I can start making better decisions. I see some spikes that are happening at 2 o'clock every day. And you start diving into your logs and you find out that your executive staff's watching the Masters golf tournament, and it's killing your internet. So, okay, let's figure this out. Now you can take action. Right. And so great data allows you to take great action is my thing as an engineer. And I know you've got a slide deck you want to get to here soon, but I really wanted to set the stage for people coming in and for people who are going to be watching this on YouTube later, because a lot of you love to subscribe to our events and then watch them on YouTube. So you don't get the questions. We do have a lot of live viewers on Facebook, it looks like. So that's really great. And so what I want to see, Brock, is you're going to dive into something that is going to irk me, but you have a PowerPoint presentation, right?
I do, because it's nice to have something to look at while you're just kind of seeing this talking head dude talking.
We have your pretty face. We could be just looking at that.
Yeah, no, it's less of my face you see. I think the happier everybody's going to be. I wish I looked more like that headshot from 2011 or whatever that is my Zoom profile. But there's a PowerPoint. I promise not to ramble on for too long. And as much as I'd love to kind of start at the end and jump to the end of the story here, really, when we talk to MSPs, when we bring them into our ecosystem at Taylor, we see a lot more front end work that we need kind of front load before we can get to the fun part at the end. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the unsexy side of data, and then kind of touch on some of the more fun pieces of it. And then certainly happy to keep chatting about the fun side after that. That's my favorite part. But we got to kind of talk about the other things too.
Let's anchor this real quick. Let's get a quick hook. At the end of your PowerPoint presentation, what should somebody know how to do?
They should understand what the purpose is of the number, the purpose of a number that they're looking at. What does this number? They should understand what questions to ask to understand what this number means for my business. We're not going to have all the answers here, but I'm going to try to give you some context on how to get good data coming in, what that data is going to kind of go through, and then what we're looking for it to do for us on the other side. That's really it. And again, happy to talk about the numbers and the fun stuff as we go.
Yeah, and for those of you who hear me speak on a regular basis, you hear me say something called manager porn. And the idea there is data and metrics that you put in front of people that looks pretty, you can do nothing about other than stare at. And so I know Sean Lardo's out there somewhere. If he's watching this right now, then it's going to be like, he's going to laugh his butt off because he loves that phrase. But the idea is that your data you should have on a screen should be actionable. Just like I talked about my cacti reports. It shouldn't just be a pretty graph sitting in front of you. It shouldn't just be a couple extra things. It should be something that drives you to an action that benefits the group. And so, or benefits your company. So Brock, go ahead and get us there. Tell us how this works.
I will do my best to get us there. So we are, we know a little bit about who Taylor is. For those of you who don't, we serve MSPs. This is why we're qualified to stand here and talk about data, because we've been playing with MSP data for decades now. MSPs we work with see an average NOI increase, bottom line profitability of about 4% over a couple years. And we've seen a number of them to successful exit now after having been with us and improving their businesses. We are very deep into the financials. And in fact, a number of the services that we provide, I'm not going to read all this to you or even stay on it for more than a couple seconds. But
are you supposed to be sharing a slideshow right now?
What was that?
Were you meaning to share a slideshow right now?
I'm jumping along. I just got to tell you who we are. Dennis O'Connell, who's up here, will find me and kill me if I don't at least take 2 seconds to tell you who the hell Taylor Business Group is.
Definitely.
I introduced myself. I'll skip to it. But BI. So we look. Pretty charts are fun. I love pretty charts. Everybody loves pretty charts. But what's the point? And really, I want to emphasize to the point you were just making, Adam, is that BI is about getting to decisions faster. It's about taking action. There's this little thing called decision fatigue that people don't really even think about until it hits them at the end of the day, and they just don't want to decide anything. Come home from work, what's for dinner? I don't know. I'm done making.
Where do you want to eat? I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care because I've been making decisions all day. And using your BI well makes the decisions easier and lessens that decision fatigue, giving you more capacity to take action and do things. So you want to have good data. You want to be using your BI efficiently. And like I said, pretty's fun. I like pretty charts too. We call them vanity dashboards, not manager porn. But hey, pretty data is pretty data, right?
Well, I had the opportunity to go and attend one of the Taylor Business Group meetings conferences last February, and I gotta say it was refreshing because you're sitting there and it's a smaller group of several peer groups, almost like there's other peer groups out there, and the idea is to talk to other MSPs about what actually they're doing, to talk to experts about what actually is working for you and when you're changing things around. And so the idea here is that when you go to a Taylor Business Group mini big, you got did I say that right? The mini big?
The mini big was where we had multiple groups,
multiple
together.
Peer groups.
So
yeah. So I did the Lafayette one. We got to go do a crawfish boil, and it wasn't this stereotypical conference where it was just everybody was shoehorned into doing the main events from the usual big vendors with the usual crowd. It was intimate. People cared about each other and what they were doing and how their MSPs were being successful. And having been somebody who's been at a billion conferences, that was really refreshing to see some genuine efforts.
Yeah, no, it is pretty fan. I do financial reviews for a number of our groups, so I get to join in a lot. I actually used to coach a few of them, and still have our project managers, and the level of engagement, the level of connection, the level of people genuinely trying to help each other, and the belief that rising tides raises ships. I haven't seen it any stronger than I've seen it in our community. I've been around the industry for a while, so I hear you.
Being new to the channel, it is. Sorry, I know we're on a tangent here. It's been an interesting experience trying to figure out. There is this streamlined channel of all the vendors going in this direction with the MSPs, and the genuine feeling is kind of fell apart. And I know I'm killing you, Skip. Genuine, that's how Nebraskans say it. To go and flow in the same direction. And there's no authenticity there. Where are we caring for each other as individual MSPs? We're each individual snowflakes. We have our different crowds. We have our different offerings. How do we help the person where they are? And I feel like Taylor Business Group really has nailed that as a peer group. And so highly recommend you check these guys out. You're going to see from Brock here this kind of idea of like valuable data, not just sellable data, but valuable data that you can action on and will drive you to a profitable level.
Right. I mean, I could sit here. I just realized I wasn't sharing my screen. I thought you were being snarky earlier, and you asked if
no.
You're like, oh no, a slideshow. I responded with the snark. I didn't realize didn't actually click the share button in Zoom. I haven't used Zoom in ages, and
you're fine.
Apparently, I need someone to come by and help me to do that.
I haven't used PowerPoint in a good decade, so we're even there.
So yeah, you talked a bit about something that I think is really important to touch on, and it's. Look, we love our data at Taylor. I mean, we love data, we love numbers, we love financials and benchmarks, and saying, look, your NOI is at 8% because you're underpricing your contracts and you have one too many techs and you're spending too much on marketing and not getting enough return. But that doesn't really tell the whole picture. And I really want to asterisk everything I'm about to say with the fact that your business has things to run on other than data. Your business runs on decisions, and decisions are part data, but there's an emotional factor too. That's, the anecdotes, the experiences of your team, your mission and values, the things that matter to owners. You as an owner have your own personal values. The things your customers say to you personally matter and have impact. And those things need to always be weighed in. As your business grows, though, as an owner and then later even as a leader in the company, you start to get disconnected from the things that drive all those feelings. So the data becomes really important to manage your business, but don't lose sight of the fact that there's a lot more going on than just the numbers. And this is from the guy who does numbers all day. This is my life is numbers at Taylor. So to remember that, it's really important to keep that asterisk in mind.
What do you mean by empirical factors there?
Yeah, so it's data. Data. I should have just called it data. I got too geeky for my own good.
It's fancy words. And I'm just a Nebraskan,
Yeah, no, you're good. It's a fair point. No, so we're talking about empirical factors. We're talking about things that are measurable, quantifiable data at the end of the day, versus the things that are a little more subjective, a little more squishy. Things like feelings and attention and care and anecdotes. The stuff that really drives us all at the end of the day, but the data gives us kind of those guideposts so we know where we're going.
Okay.
So look, I have distilled like years of academic study here down into like one chart. This is a really famous chart in the world of data science. I'm going to skip all the fun, flowery academic stuff, but I'm bringing this up for a reason, because there's confusion. I'm going to go through this here in a second with a little more detail. But the decisions come from the stuff at the very top of the pyramid. At the very bottom of the pyramid is just data. It's just stuff. So I'm going to run through these pretty quickly and tell a little story, tell a bit of a story here as we go, and hopefully not ramble on and make this boring. So at the bottom of the pyramid, we have just the numbers.
Oh,
Just
I'll keep people entertained.
just a little dance number for you.
It's killing me. There's no top to the pyramid. Where's there needs
There
to be
isn't. Well, action.
This
So
is more of a
those are all-
plateau. Is this like an Aztec one where they kill people at the top and they throw them off the bottom?
That's it. The sacrificial layers at the top.
Yeah, that's a Chichen Itza there. That's not a pyramid.
I like it. A ziggurat. We'll call it a ziggurat.
There we go. Okay, I'll accept the ziggurat. The wisdom ziggurat.
The wisdom, the data science ziggurat. So data sits at the bottom. It's what holds everything else up. The data ends up being a good chunk of the data is huge. And the thing to remember about data is there's a ton of it. You don't need most of it. You don't have to use it all. Just because you collect data doesn't mean you ever need to do anything with it, but like do forensics on it later on or something. We don't have to analyze it all. Not all your data is going to drive decisions. Most of the data, even in well-run, heavily analytical companies, goes unused. And most statistics are made up just, for reference. So when you're talking about the data, this is where everything falls apart. I'm probably going to spend most of my time talking about data because this is where the problems come. People just expect to install Power BI or use RTP or use whatever dashboarding tool you want to use and expect it's going to achieve all of their insights when they don't realize they've got garbage data underneath it. So you're better off not trying to do anything with your data until you're sure your data is really representative of what's going on in reality. Big deal. And we talk about financials. A lot of that comes from having good bookkeeping. I know it's not fun to talk about bookkeeping. I'm not going to drone on about it for too long.
It's absolutely necessary, though.
Absolutely necessary. And it is so easy to just go hire a random bookkeeper off of Upwork or whatever, and not then wonder why your financial statements aren't reflective of reality. Every transaction is posted, sure, but is it going to the right place? So there's a few things, like I'm just going to give you like 3 bullet points here of things to think about from a bookkeeping standpoint. We've done like entire breakout sessions on this topic. So I'm going to distill that down to just a few things to keep in mind. Biggest one is the matching principle. Cash is not accrual. And for those of you who have no idea what that means, just because I take money in and money goes out does not necessarily, it's not necessarily the way I want to post that in my financial statement. So cash transactions reflect the money on your balance sheets, the money coming in, it's the money going out. Accrual is about having things actually posted in the months where they occur, so that if I sell a server in January, I buy the server in December, I need the expense for the server to occur in January and the revenue to also occur in January. Because if I have the expense in one month and the revenue the next month, I have no idea how much money I made in my hardware. All the numbers are out of whack. If I have a third payroll, a lot of companies have an extra payroll twice a year. If I'm just watching my payroll numbers, I have this spike in May or whatever, and then that comes back down in June. That's all well and good. Sure, I understand that spike is because I had a third payroll. But if I handle the accrual properly, if I do my bookkeeping on that properly, my payroll number is flat all year. And what that means is if I'm trying to calculate my profitability on an accrual basis, on the basis of how my business flows and functions, I'm going to get good numbers. So all that to say, you got to make sure the stuff matches. There's great ways to do it. Good bookkeepers know how to do it. If you see weird spikes in your numbers, it's a good time to push back and say, look, is there a better way to do this? Should we be handling this differently? Got to make sure your chart of accounts matches your business. I can't tell you how many times we talk to somebody who installs QuickBooks, grabs the sample chart of accounts for a service company and runs with it, and wonders why they don't have good financials. Your chart of accounts is the foundation of how your books run. Make sure it matches. If you're going to then later try to benchmark, you're going to use our benchmarks or somebody else's to measure your financial performance.
What is a chart of accounts?
Chart of accounts is a list of GL accounts. It's basically every account that you've got where you're going to post transactions. It's like budget categories if you're doing personal finance. Same idea.
Okay.
Gotta make sure
kind of like a cost center.
Yeah, it's how we decide if I spend $10 at Costco, where does that $10 go? How do I categorize that $10 expense? And where does that money, how do I account for that money? If I have payroll, where do I put that payroll dollars? Where do I pull them from? Where does that go? Chart of accounts is about making sure that your financials make sense. And again, you're going to want some help getting your chart of accounts in line. And by the way, we'll send you ours. Dennis, who's on here, will be happy to do that for you. I'll put this email in a second.
What is a good example of somebody, if your chart of accounts is out of alignment?
Yeah.
What's a good indicator of that? What would be happening in my business if my chart of accounts was out of alignment?
You have no idea what's going on with your company. You can't understand how profitable certain parts of your business are. You don't know if your services are making you money or not, because everything goes into one place. You just have numbers at the end of the month when you look at your income statement. You don't have any answers. You just have numbers on a page.
Which is how a lot of people operate, and they feel like this is just the way it is. Like you just guess when you should hire a new employee. I think I should, like, I see this on the Facebook groups all the time in MSPs of like, how much should I charge? And if you're asking that question, it means you do not know what your chart of accounts is. You are not tracking your costs appropriately, have not predicted those models. It's not a ton of work to start. I mean, over time, it's going to build up, but this is a question that is personal to each one of you MSPs and how you design profitability. You can be bringing in large checks and sitting there asking yourself, why am I losing money every month? This is your answer, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. That goes back to the cash and accrual question too. I mean, you can bring lots of money on a cash basis, but if that's all going out in expenses, maybe in a different month that you don't see, then you're going to be losing money at the end of the day and not know why if you're not paying attention to it.
Correct.
Accruals about letting you, really at the end of the day, what we're saying is we need your financial system, your financial statements, your chart of accounts to reflect the operations of your business, so that later on you can start to slice and dice it a bit and understand where you're making money and where you're not making money, where money might be leaking out of your company that you don't even realize it. Can't tell you how many times we look at, we do group financials, and one of the numbers we look at is just hardware margin. Should be the easiest number in the world to calculate, right? Because hardware sales, hardware expenses, do the math and whatever. And how often that number will come out at like 8%, 7%, 6%, and the owner will sit there and say, but we mark everything up 25%. How can I have an 8% margin? And yeah, sure, you mark it all up 25%, but you don't realize all the things that happen down the line, and your books are out of whack, so you don't even recognize it when the expenses get out of control and money's just walking out the door and you don't even realize it. Good bookkeeping helps to adjust for some of those problems. And the last thing that comes up, and this happens a lot, that's why I picked it, it's only 3 things, we can talk about this for an hour, is understanding what goes where. So when I get a bill from a big software company that has my PSA, my RMM, my backup software, security software, 365 management tools, and who knows what else they're selling me, consulting time, on this one invoice, the bookkeeper you just hired from nowhere and didn't train is going to take that entire bill and stick it under subscriptions or something, where really the PSA is a cost against one part of your business. The backup software is a cost against another part of the business. And we really have to take that one invoice and start to break it up. That's the most complicated scenario. And then there's simpler ones that we don't need to go into necessarily. But the point being that every transaction needs to have a rule for where it's going to go. And everyone has to be on the same page for where this thing gets posted, and it has to get posted there at the same place every month. Because otherwise your numbers are all out of whack.
Rules. So what I'm looking for, what transactions go where. So for me, it's like cost center accounting was like what I lived by. So I constantly bring this back up. And so
what cost center does it go into?
Yeah. So you can have a category. So for those of you newer to budgeting and business finance, you can have something like, oh, wait, is this a marketing thing or is this a sales thing? Is this cost of doing business? Is this client acquisition cost? Why did I spend the $5 at Starbucks? What was the purpose of that? And so being able to say, like, to my accountants, I say, when you see this transaction going in, it's because I did this thing. And so it saves me a ton of time when I have to find rules, because then my bookkeepers can immediately take care of that. And then when I look at my finances, I go, oh, well, I probably need to roll back on my marketing budget a little bit because that's killing my CAC. And so is this kind of what you're referring to here?
This is where we're going with it. It's understanding that that expense is a marketing expense versus a subscription expense or a subcontractor expense or whatever else that we know when this money flows in or out of our business, that we know where it's going. And this all applies to, look, you've got your PSA. A lot of these PSAs will send data directly to your accounting package, which is wonderful if it's set up correctly. But if you don't set it up correctly, you're going to find everything going into the wrong spots and making a mess of your numbers. Look, if you can't look at your financial statement at the end of the month and say, I spent this much on marketing, my services profitability looks like this, I made this much on my products, I spent this much on sales. If you can't do that with your chart of accounts today, you probably need to fix it. And that's kind of where all of the magic that happens later starts, with fixing that stuff. And these are just our recommendations here. You don't have to follow ours. We've just been doing it for a long time and kind of know what we're doing. But again, it doesn't have to be our system. The important thing is that you're intentional about what you're trying to look at. Ours is designed so that you can look at different business lines efficiently and understand what's profitable and what isn't.
Yeah, and this bullet point here, Liz, for people watching, is this data here. These 5 things can really make a difference in how you run your MSP and turn you from having $5,000 of profit next year to having $50,000 of profit, because now you understand I overspent on sales. Or you can look at best practice, hey, I'm supposed to be spending 40% of this income on sales, and I'm only spending 5%. Now you know why you're stalling as a company. Right. And that is important, because I get talked to so many MSPs that say, I don't know why I'm stalling. And then they look at this and go, oh, I'm not doing this thing. I'm underspending here, or I'm overspending there. And when you tweak those little things, it doesn't seem like it should make a big difference, but it's just like managing a firewall. You're congested. You don't know why the internet keeps slowing down at periods of time. You'll look at the data and you go, oh, my packet sizes are completely wrong. I've got some fragmentation going on. I got this thing, and you can then solve the problem. But if you're with your finances, if you're just throwing cash out at the wall and at problems and not actually being deterministic, for lack of a better term, about what you're doing, how do you make better decisions? You're just going with gut instinct and emotional buy, which goes back to that first slide there.
Which is fine to a point, but it's when you get to that point where I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know what to do next. I don't know how to move my story forward. That's a good indication you kind of hit that wall of where your emotion can lead you. It's time to spend a little bit more time on the data, which, again, the pretty charts are the fun part at the end. This is all the unsexy stuff we have to do to get to the pretty charts at the end.
This is, I think there's at MSP Geek, there's going to be a track for humanizing things. And, this is the unsexy part, but it's also where the rubber meets the road, where you level up, where you actually take and start modernizing your own MSP and taking that next step to being and understanding what is going on and internalizing yourself and saying, okay, who am I and who am I trying to be?
Yeah, this last one is where a lot of MSPs really get hung up when we start working with them. It's the comp. So you have your payroll, one big check, one big payment goes out to Paychecks or whoever does your payroll, and they take one big draw out of your bank account, and you don't have any idea where that money really got spent. What parts of your company are consuming your payroll? Just as one of those things that if you talk about people hitting a wall and not knowing where the expenses are going. Payroll is a big one, and we see that all the time. If you don't know who's getting the benefit of most of your revenue, you really need to be splitting that out more intentionally. And a note on chart of account stuff. It's just half a second here. When you get to that point of kind of doing things in a way that it's a little more logical, whether we're helping you or somebody else is, you're just kind of getting it done. You got to make sure that your revenue, your cost of goods match up. so that we can look at profitability really cleanly. So these are things to think about. And at the end of the day, if you just want ours and want to skip all that, Dennis, whose email is on the slide here, will be happy to send you our sample chart of accounts. So if you don't know where to start, if you want a kind of a place to go, ours has all kinds of stuff on it. You just delete the parts you don't need, and it'll at least help you get this start to move this part of the story forward a little bit faster.
Yeah, and it is so great because you guys are engineers out there, and you get this information, and now you can make a decision. Now you can analyze and you can digest. You're problem solvers. But if you don't see the problem, you can't solve it. You'll assume everything's going great, and in finance, things go south extremely fast. And if you don't get ahead of it, then all of a sudden you're in this place like, well, if I'd known about this 3 months ago, I could have stopped the bleeding.
Right.
I could have solved this issue, but I didn't know. That's what these chart of accounts tell you. They are your litmus test. They are your heartbeat to how your business is going. And normally you could just build these up yourself. But if you're not a finance expert, if you haven't been into finance for your entire life, now you're leveling up. This is you learning. So again, that was where I was going with the MSP track at MSP Geek with Humanize. Is the fact that how are you turning yourself from an engineer into a leader? Your entire life, you have not had to deal with this. Now you do. If you are running an MSP, you have to do this. It's not a you should or a nice to have. This is a core part of your day-to-day operations now, people. If it is not, you're waiting to die. They're waiting, something bad is going to happen, and you're going to learn the hard way. I should have been tracking that stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's
and building processes for that to help automate it. Like if you don't want to do it yourself, hire a CFO. If you don't want to do it yourself, hire good bookkeepers. Do what they say. They'll say, I need to know this information. Tell me how to categorize this stuff. So then when your CFO talks to you, they can say, hey, just so you know, you are spending way too much on hardware. You need to increase your costs. Otherwise, we're going to go out of business.
And hey, it turns out we can actually help you with that too. Once we get once we get the things cleaned up, we've got benchmarks and data that can say, hey, your hardware margins are bad. You really need to raise your prices to be competitive in the market.
Yep. And the sooner you do that, you might find out that you're undercharging.
Oh yeah,
you're charging 125 an hour, and your market is sustaining 175, 250, 500 an hour. The sooner you know this stuff, the sooner you can change, and the more confident you can go into your customer and say, "Hey, we're raising our rates to X," and they say, "Why?" And say, "Because inflation, because cost of goods, because blah blah blah," and they're like, "Oh, okay." It's not just a guess you're doing. You're not asking your other MSPs, hey, what are you guys charging? Oh, we're charging 175. Okay, I'm going to charge 172. That's not how you do it, people.
No, it's not. And you can't be afraid to ask for money and raise prices. We
there you go.
So many companies we've worked with have been shy about that, and they do the math. They figure out who the customers are who just aren't profitable, and have that conversation, that moment with them, and are always surprised by how often that conversation is relatively painless. And the customer's like, of course. I'm surprised you haven't raised prices on me in 5 years. You should probably do that now because I'd like you to be here next year to keep servicing me. Don't be afraid to raise prices. So we talked about the numbers a little bit. Let's aggregate the data. This will go a little bit faster because by the time we've gotten to this point, if your data is good, this knowledge, this summarized data, we're not making decisions yet. We're just putting things together at this point. It's going to flow pretty naturally. Really, the thing we're looking for, and this is going to come from things like your profit and loss and from your balance sheet, just simple financial statements. You should be looking at those every month. If you're not, start doing that. And you're looking primarily for things that are out of alignment, for things that are, hey, this account usually has $1,300 a month and it went to $8,000 last month. What happened? And go fix that stuff. We're not making decisions yet. We're just getting the data clean. We just want to understand where we are. And these are things like your income statement. And I'll give you a screenshot and an example of what this looks like in a second. Things like income statement, balance sheet. Your accounting package will give you pretty charts that show how this thing changes month over month. I mean, it's basic stuff. We're not at the point of being able to make decisions with this data yet. We can't decide to do anything. We can't act on it, but we want to understand where we are. The point of this part in the process is just to know where am I? What's going on? Inside of RTP, which is the thing I deal with every day. So I've got a few RTP screenshots because it's really easy for me to get those. In this case, I have a piece of knowledge. It says sales compensation for this company for Q4 was $128,000. That's it. Is that good? Is it bad? I don't know. It's just how much it costs. Does that number make sense? Is really the only thing we care about at this stage of the process. So when you look at your profit and loss, understand you're not expected to make decisions off of that, other than understanding if the data just makes sense at this stage.
Is it correct? It's kind of like looking at your firewall logs, looking at your PC logs. Are these the right numbers? So that when there is a spike, when something is out of alignment, you can say, whoa,
right,
that's not right.
Right.
Let's look into that.
Is this even valid? Is this just noise? Did something get posted to the wrong account? Did something unexpected happen? We're not making decisions. We're just trying to be informed about where we are at this point. We're just lumping things together. This is where it gets fun. And by the way, the last part, the knowledge stage, is where most BI tools end. About the best you can get off of it is a chart that shows where you are. It doesn't give you anything that you can actually make decisions off of without doing a fair bit more work. Now we need to determine, is this number valid? Is it good? Do I care? Really, the point when we get to this point in the process, when we're looking at a number, is to decide if it matters. Does it warrant our attention? You as an owner, I talked about decision fatigue earlier, same idea with your attention, your time. You only have so much to give. You have to pick your battles very carefully when it comes to making decisions. So which decisions do I even need to make? What things warrant further investigation? And this is where you really need to, we're really comparing the things we've got with other reference points. In our case, benchmarks, others in the industry, it's what we do. But there's other things you can compare against too. Prior periods, we talked earlier about a number increasing. Once you determine it's valid, my hardware costs, my recurring product costs went up. Do I need to do anything with it? Do I need to make a decision on it? It's really this point where we're comparing things, where we're saying that the baseline is here and we're here. And now we know there's a gap, and now we need to decide if we do anything with the gap. We use benchmarks to provide that for the people we work with. Benchmarks really are there to make that process easy. So there's a lot less guesswork in knowing whether a number is good or not. And the nice thing too about using benchmarking is that the data quality, the data standards are already there, because nobody can give you benchmarks without telling you how to store your data in the first place. If I tell you that your service margin should be 42.6%, I can't say that without telling you what service margin means and how to record it. So there's a lot of benefit to adopting benchmarking systems. And it really answers that question of whether, to your point earlier in the community, people asking community, is this normal? Benchmarking is there to answer that question for you about wide ranges of your numbers. We are not the only ones who do best benchmarking, but of course we're the best at it because I'm here talking to you today.
Yeah, and I love benchmarks because, one, some people see them as the answer. Like, no, benchmarks are pressure. That's a pressure on a market. You have to decide how you're going to deal with a benchmark so you can show this is why we're making this decision. So I know it's changed my decisions on like how much cash to push towards sales versus marketing. That's a forever question in my mind. How much money should I be spending as a business on marketing versus sales? And it was a big argument, I think like 2-3 years ago, where people were like, everybody's pushing into marketing and you should be pushing, like, it was some crazy number, like 40% into sales. And they released this benchmark and everybody's like, and it's like, that's crazy. I'm like, where are you getting it from? We're squeezing out of marketing and putting in the people actually on the phone. And so like, you look over here, I love this stuff, like, but maybe you're exceeding this.
Right.
Maybe you're not. Maybe you're getting more margin out of something else. But at least now you can ground yourself and at least say, where am I supposed to be?
Exactly. That's the whole purpose of this. It's just the benchmarks are the signs on the road, the stripes on the road. They tell you, am I following the path traveled? Am I making my own path? Am I going in a different direction? It's not, benchmarks don't decide if something is good or bad. This is another screenshot of RTP. We're doing the traffic light thing right now. Green is within the benchmark and exceeding it. Red is below or underperforming relative to the benchmark. We're actually looking at changing this in part because the red implies bad, danger, action, when really we just need it to apply attention. We need to
Yeah.
be aware of what's going on. And I'll talk more about that in a second, but just to kind of bookend the topic, information in this academic ziggurat is really just there to tell us if something is good or not. That's it. Like, is it good? Is it good relative to something else? Am I within some other tolerance? I say good thing because is it within the accepted tolerance is too many words. I try to keep things short where I can. But that's it. That's all we're trying to do. Is this good? Doesn't mean you have to do anything about it. We're just trying to bring awareness to the situation. And ultimately, well, then we get to make decisions. We get to start doing fun things with it. We've now decided which numbers warrant attention, which things are out of alignment that we really want to pay attention to. We know which numbers need action. To the point you just made earlier, Adam, it's like you were reading ahead. Being off target doesn't mean it's a problem. It really doesn't. We just say, look, you need to ask yourself, do we know why this number is off target? Are we aware of it? Sales spend is a great example. A lot of MSPs will spend more on sales. They'll exceed the benchmark. They'll be at 15, 20% in sales. Huge numbers of sales dollars, and it'll hurt their profitability. And that'll put them into the red on the charts, and their NOI will go down and their sales expense will go up. But they're growing, 30% year over year. And that's an intentional investment. Great. As long as you're hitting your goals, you're good.
I've said that for a long time. Like in technology, especially in hyper growth industries, it is not about being in the black all the time. It's like shifting gears. If you want to go faster, you have to push on the clutch pedal eventually. You eventually have to shift. And so sometimes you're going to be off target on some of your numbers. You're going to run cash flow deficit, or you're going to start burning your sales dollars as you hire a new salesperson and they start ramping up. That's okay as long as it's expected. That's why I love that second question you have up there. Is this expected? Yes, I am expecting for clients to drop off right now because we are shifting gears and we are expecting this behavior to happen. If we didn't expect it, like, oh crap, what did we do wrong? Or why didn't I predict this? And how can we get into our models for future reference?
Right. And if it is expected in the case of a sales example, I need to know what else I can measure, because now I can't measure my spend anymore. It's not a valid metric because we've decided that it's not relevant. So how do I know I'm being successful in whatever it is I'm investing in? Maybe I added a new service headcount and it's going to dip my service margin for a while, but do I now have the capacity to now sell another $100,000 of revenue because I've added this one service coordinator headcount or something?
I think your that fourth question there helps. Like when you have this breakdown, as people are showing you, when you're managing your accounts appropriately, you can act in confidence and take risks in confidence. So I know if I spend an extra 10% of my budget on hiring a new salesperson or doing a marketing campaign, I know historically I've gotten a return on that cost. So I should outpace the expense in 3 months.
And now you can test that assumption month over month to ensure you're actually hitting those targets.
Yes.
Exactly.
Actionable data, people. There's no difference in finance than looking at your logs, looking at your performance cues in PTRG or whatever your monitoring software is. Finance is the same way. It's just metrics.
An actionable part is what is important. We don't like vanity metrics in this world anyway. They're great on TVs in your office to impress your visitors, great. But they don't really do anything for running your business. Every piece of data that makes it up to the top of that pyramid, meaning it's on a dashboard, it's on a scorecard, you're looking at it, needs to have action tied to it in some form. And these are just some things to look at as that number drifts. Just because it's drifted, as to the point we keep beating in repeatedly because it's so important, is that does not mean it's bad, does not mean it's a problem. And I want to highlight too that we use dials. You saw a screenshot of our TP earlier. We've got, red and green dials. But the goal is not for your business to have a bunch of green dials. That does not define success for you as a business owner. I mean, we're going to pat you on the back and give you a trophy or something. But at the end of the day, your business is there to achieve some mission according to whatever vision and values you've defined. Whether you've written that down or it's in your head, there's still a purpose to your business's existence. Otherwise, you'd probably just have a job. Your goal is to achieve that mission, whatever it is, not to just hit our benchmarks. They're navigation points. They're there to give you some semblance of the world around you, so you've got something to landmark to navigate against, rather than just guessing and sort of floundering about blindly and hoping you're going to get there eventually.
I mean, for anybody who wants a book reference, older book, The Goal, 1984. It's in like its 10th revision now. It just stands the test of time. Like, what is the point of what you're doing? Do you just have a job, or are you trying to accomplish something? And how are you accomplishing it? Is it just about benchmarks now? Just about how many tickets you can close? Or is it about lifting up and achieving what you're trying to do? Maybe you were tired of how IT was done. That's why I am. I was tired of how IT was accomplished, and I decided to form a company that would change the way IT was done and be more human centric in our solutions. That's our mission. Have conversations. And so what is your mission? What is your MSP's value add? So one of the things that Brock has not mentioned here is that as you learn about this stuff, it's going to give you insight into what behaviors your clients have and why they're making the decisions. A lot of you come to me and say, Adam, my customers don't buy my projects. They won't do it. That's because you don't understand this. You understand this, the stuff that they're talking about over here, then your clients are gonna be like, oh, because now you're relating to them. Like, hey, you know what? If we install this hardware and you put it towards this cost center, it's gonna help you generate more revenue. They won't be able to sign the check fast enough. Versus you just giving them a random cost. And if you're just assigning random costs in your own company, that's why you don't understand why your client, this is a great idea. It's a great solution that you just provided to them, but it doesn't meet any of their criteria on helping their business be successful and achieve its mission. And that's the core of what we're trying to teach and change in the IT industries. Stop talking about tickets and benchmarks. Start talking about your value proposition to your clients in their terms. And if you learn this about yourself, you're going to learn it about them immediately.
It is remarkable how often, back working in my MSP time, how often I would sit in front of a client and teach them about their business. Because as we mature inside of our own businesses, we then start to sometimes exceed the people we're serving. And now you're sitting in a QBR having a conversation with the client about teaching them how to interpret their data. What does this data mean for you? Why, you want us to build a dashboard for you, but let's go back about 4 steps. Let's talk about your business processes and what you're really trying to accomplish and how we get the quality of the data and how this aligns to your vision, Mr. Client, and not just, great, yeah, we can spin that up as a project and get you some licenses for Power BI or whatever.
Yeah, and check how Brock and I are talking back and forth here. I'm asking questions, but some of them are leading because I remember when I was simply an engineer. I was a very good engineer, people. I loved being an engineer.
And the most humble engineer too, right?
Yeah. Oh, there was nobody more humble than I. No, the idea is that I was sitting there and I loved data centers. I loved Nexus Core administration. I loved doing what I did. And I was an intelligent human being. I did not know any of this. And I didn't want people to know that I didn't understand it. So I started asking questions subtly. But then once I started understanding it, I could then get in conversations with people and ask intelligent questions. And so like when Brock's like talking about this stuff, the conversation he and I are having right now, I could not have had 10 years ago. It would have been really, really difficult for me. So when you start learning this stuff about your own business and you go and you start talking to your client, and they start mentioning this stuff off the cuff, and then you're like, oh, well, what's your blah, 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 blah. And you start talking about your ledgers. And you start talking about how this new sales push of, pushing 40% of your profits into sales starts coming in, or your OpEx should be at this level. Like, oh yeah, I read that book too. And now you're relating with your customer And they're going to let you into that seat at the table a little bit more because now they get that you understand finance and you understand business theory. And now they're going to be willing to listen to you when you say, look, if you guys don't get on top of your capital expenditures on your PCs and hardware, you're going to get yourself into a technology deficit that's going to crush you in 4 years. So we got to get ahead of this now. Now you have their ear. Or, and maybe they, what are you talking about? Technology deficit? And now you get to educate them. Sorry, that's my soapbox, and I'll step off it for a little while.
Yeah, no, you're good. I can't agree more with everything you're saying. It's fantastic. So we kind of cap this off at Taylor with business improvement groups, but really what I'm saying is get out of your own head, get out of your own space, get out of your comfort zone a little bit, talk to other people, bring them in, trust those people with your deepest, darkest business secrets, and share the information that you've gained. Share that, hey, my sales benchmark is here. What do I do about this? What does this mean? Have that conversation out in the open with other people. Be candid, be vulnerable with them, be real, to be a little trite with my word choice. We use business improvement groups for that. Adam was alluding earlier to how conversational those really can be, how genuinely supportive and helpful, and that's what you need, whether that's with us, with inside of your own local groups or whatever. But you need something to help you make sense of what's going on and get out of your head. And you bring this information to that conversation, and then you start to chart the path forward and gain that wisdom, and then drive the action that you're trying to achieve in your business.
Don't do it alone, people.
Don't do it alone.
At this point in your career, you should realize the point of having good mentors and how valuable they are. Business improvement groups. Oh my gosh, somebody else to be able to look at your finances and say, I'm doing something very similar, and here's how I fixed it.
Yeah. And even jumping on the bandwagon of getting the metrics and the dashboards and all this stuff into place, it takes a lot of work. It's a project, and getting other people who are going through that with you at the same time can help you. You're going to run into the same issues converting your chart of accounts and learning how to break things out. You share that together, and you're going to get faster answers to it. And yeah, look, I'm just kind of bookending what I've been saying here. This is about the end of things. Here, this RTP example I used, we've got a modeling function in there. I said, look, my sales expenses were off. If I bump the revenue up $50,000 over the quarter without changing anything else, we will hit our benchmark. So I have a revenue target that now I can hit. And now I'm going to say, look, if I can add, I know I shouldn't even do the math on this. It's probably not quite right. I know it's $2,000 of MRR is $144,000 in recurring revenue. And that's now the wisdom. This is the action that I'm going to take off of the data that I've seen up to this point. And now I just need to build a sales plan to hit that target, which is all about the numbers at the end of the day. But now I have something I can manage myself to. So all this to say, decisions come from the wisdom, not the data. It's the data. It's just noise. It's just numbers. It doesn't matter. You've got to consolidate that data into meaningful groups. You have to then benchmark that against something to know if it's within or outside of normal values, and then decide what to do about that, if anything. Back to those questions we had up earlier. Be intentional. Be consistent with how you handle this. Once you make a decision based on the data, don't just walk that back 2 days later. Have that path charted forward for yourself and your business, and walk it. And remember that not every insight is actionable. I can't emphasize that enough. Adam said it about 9 times. I'll say it at least as much too, because not every insight is anything. Doesn't require action. Doesn't need to be fixed or addressed. Sometimes it just is, and we just understand it and we work with it. I talked a bunch about finances. I'm going to shamelessly plug our service. If you're interested in the service data side of things, we run a workshop for service managers. We go through the math of MSP service and the metrics that make that successful, and how to run and lead a service team. We've got a workshop coming up. Dennis, I'm sure, would love to talk to anybody about that if you've got interest in attending. But that's the end of the shameless plug I had to kind of work in there.
Oh, shameless plugs are great.
I felt obliged.
And I'll second that plug here. You guys all know that I don't recommend everyone, but when I went to this, it was really refreshing to go to these more intimate groups where I felt like people genuinely wanted to be there. They like Dennis, who was it that hosted the crawfish boil? That was fantastic.
Brett Mesh. Brett Mesh. He's fantastic.
It was at his MSP, and we sat around and we enjoyed crawfish. We I as a Nebraskan, I'd never been to anything like this before, but they sat down, they showed you how to eat it, they showed you what to do, and we were just kind of hanging out, and it was refreshing because not only did they spend the last 3 days like looking at all their financials and talking through different seminars and listening to really boring guys talk about QBRs and client meetings, they all got together and genuinely enjoyed each other's company. And so when you come to these meetings, you're building relationships as well as getting extremely valuable insight because they are a value add. They're not just, hey, show up to this conference, take a break, send some webinars and go home. You'll walk away with something valuable.
Yeah, every time.
So any other final thoughts before I let you go there, Brock?
Yeah, no, I think I've shared as much as I can cram into an hour slot. There's everything we talk about has so many other tangents and branches, and there's so much depth to go into that there just never is enough time to share all of it. So I hope at least this higher level view of how to work with your data, how to understand it, how to look at it is helpful. Because I can sit here and share benchmarks for an hour and talk about what your service margin should be and what your contract profit should be. But if your data is not clean, if you don't understand how to calculate those things, all of that's just noise. It's just numbers, just words. It doesn't do you any good at the end of the day.
Yeah, and if I have to summarize this entire webinar, it's like you can't action on what you don't know. And so you need better data. You guys are engineers. You know how this works. You need data to action. And right now, if you don't have this information, you're walking blind. You're just at the whims of the economy, and you're at the whims of whether or not you made a good emotional decision 5 years ago. If you start getting that insights, you get control. It is now in your hands. You don't have to be a financial guru. You can work with people who are. And then you will start reflecting better to your clients as you understand their motivations and can speak their speak. So from a QBR or from a client meeting standpoint, learning this stuff, getting involved in a tailored business group, a finance group like this, will help you relate to your customers and help you sell your products better because now you understand why somebody wants to buy your stuff. Thank you very much for coming on, Brock. Let's do this again sometime.
My pleasure. Happy to.
Thank you, everyone.